at the Commonwealth Youth Council. Through these positions, she worked to empower Gambian youth to become involved in governance processes. Welcome, Lala Toure. Next is Dr. Jojo Ndur Tambiru, who is a distinguished figure in the STEM field, renowned for her outstanding contributions to research, innovation, science, education, and leadership. As the chairperson of the Sector Skills Council for ICT and a member of the Technical Vocational Education and Training Committee, she actively shapes the landscape of STEM education in the Gambia. Currently serving as the president of the Rise Women Gambia Network and an advisor for the Gambia Women in STEM initiative, Dr. Jojo is committed to building bridges for aspiring women in STEM, creating environments for their success. As the CEO of Insys Global, one of the largest technology companies in the Gambia and co-founder of AfriJula, a rapidly growing tech support, she plays a pivotal role in advancing technology-driven solutions. In 2021, Dr. Jojo's company partnered with UNCDF to provide digital literacy training to over 10,000 youth and women entrepreneurs, including smaller women farmers. Passionate about leveraging technology for change in education, health, agriculture, she has spearheaded initiatives such as developing the first industry-led accredited mobile application developer curriculum in the Gambia and crafting the digital transformation strategy for the skills development sector. Recognized for her transformative work, she was featured in the Forbes Africa 2022 as a woman leader in tech, changing the ecosystem. In 2023, she earned a spot on the Choice Africa's prestigious list of young Africans under 40 driving change on the continent. Welcome, Dr. Tambiru. Please give her a round of applause. Next to introduce is Pastor Francis Forbes, born to Gambian parents, who has been a consistent high achiever with a deep commitment to elevating his country. Winning the Grade 3 piano prize at 14 showcased his early excellence. After earning his BSc in biochemistry from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, he founded the Abiding Word Ministries Gambia in 1988, dedicating 3 decades to building a ministry known for integrity and excellence. As the host of the nationally popular Discovering Truth on GRTS, which has been on TV for over 2 decades, Pastor Forbes has impacted diverse audiences with messages of empowerment, national development, and love for country and God. He is dubbed the nation's pastor. His weekly insights have significantly influenced individuals and the nation as a whole. Beyond his ministry, Pastor Forbes established the Forbes Academy in 2019, focusing on training, mentoring, and coaching in areas like public speaking, team building, and leadership. He's decorated with the national insignia in 2008 for his contribution. Pastor Forbes continued to serve as a facilitator, mediator, and influencer, blending passion, simplicity, and practical wisdom in his multifaceted ministry. Married to Angela, a lawyer, Pastor Forbes balances a busy schedule of international engagements while mentoring, advising, and coaching with infectious passion and deep insight. Thank you very much, Pastor Forbes, for joining us. Please give him a big round of applause. Next on our list of distinguished panelists is Mohamed Kurbali, born in Sankulekunda, who overcame visual impairment challenges to become a trailblazing legal professional in the Gambia. After transferring to Kampama School for the Blind, he mastered the Braille, building confidence for independent learning, holding leadership roles in schools and university, including president of the Pan-African Student Association. He also excelled in debate remarkably. Mr. Kurbali pursued legal studies at GTTI and University of the Gambia, making history as the first visually impaired person called to the Gambian bar. His career spans roles as facilitator of the Integrated Education, Assistant Registrar of the High Court, and Gambia's first visually impaired first-class magistrate, later promoted to principal magistrate. Notably, he served as chairman of the Gambian Federation of the Disabled, Secretary General of the West African Federation of the Disabled, and chairman of the National Disability Advisory Council. Mr. Krubali's journey embodies resilience, leadership, and advocacy for inclusivity in the Gambia. Welcome, Mr. Krubali. Next is Nene MC Cham, who is a seasoned legal practitioner with over 2 decades of active engagement in the legal landscape of the Gambia. Since her enrollment as a barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of the Gambia, she has been a stalwart advocate for human rights with a particular focus on championing the rights of women, children, and other vulnerable members of our society. Renowned for her unwavering commitment to justice, Nene has established herself as a leading authority in the realm of women and children's rights, earning accolades and recognition for her tireless efforts. Her passion for equality and justice shines through in her extensive pro bono work, where she offers vital legal services to those in need without hesitation. Nene's leadership as president of the Female Lawyers Association of the Gambia, FLAG, from 2011 to 2016 was marked by resounding success. Through her illustrious career, Nene has been at the forefront of landmark legal battles representing women and children in myriad of cases spanning all courts of the land. In addition to her courtroom advocacy, she served in various esteemed positions, including vice chairperson of the Farababanta Commission of Inquiry, and in December 2013, she was elected president of the Gambia Bar Association. She is the chairperson of the National Agency for Legal Aid, LALA. Thank you very much for joining us, Honorable Madam Nene MC Cham. We are quite fortunate to have you in our midst today. Next is Serin Fallunjai, a seasoned statistician and development professional with over 30 years of extensive experience in both national and global development initiatives. From 1985 to 2008, he held pivotal roles in the Gambian government, including head of the National Accounts, head of SPACO, and Director General of the National Planning Commission. From 2009 February to December 2016, he contributed significantly to the United Nations Millennium Campaign in New York, leading research and policy analysis for evidence-based advocacy on MDGs. He played a key role in establishing the network of African parliamentarians on the MDGs and served as the regional director for the Africa Millennium Campaign and SDG Action Network. Since February 2017, he spearheaded the establishment and coordination of the Gambia National Think Tank and later served as the National Policy Advisor at the United Nations Development Program, contributing to the transformation of Policy Analysis Unit into the Department of Strategy, Policy, and Delivery. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, you will agree with me that we indeed have quite highly qualified and competent experts here to speak on the topic at hand. So we will call them one after the other to take to the podium and reflect on the theme under discussion. And after that, we will resort to the discussions. But I have been reminded that the Chief Justice is still in the building, just like he promised before the break. He wants to address some of the questions that were addressed to him personally and other comments that were generally made. With your permission, distinguished panelists, we will allow the Chief Justice to come and address those questions, and then we can venture into the conversation. I stand to be guided. If that is okay with the members of the panel, we can definitely go ahead with that. We have the Honorable Chief Justice to come. Mr. Jammeh, you may call on him to come in, and then we take his intervention quickly and then delve into the program. So like I said, immediately after the Chief Justice's intervention, the first panelist to deliver his remarks would be Mr. Hasum Sise, followed by Lala Toure, Nene MC Cham, Mohamed Kurbali, Dr. Jojo Tambiru, Pastor Forbes, and Serin Fallunjai. Just to also remind ourselves of the house rule that we have once we get to the discussions. It's going to be one question per person, since we have quite an interesting topic at hand. And just as it was observed during the first discussion, it looks like everybody wants to participate, which is quite encouraging. That being the case, we are going to encourage all and sundry to kindly limit themselves to one question. Even if you are going to make a comment, make it as brief as possible so that everybody is given the opportunity to participate in this process. I guess while the Chief Justice is ushered in, we may go with our first speaker, and if he joins us, then we can accord him the opportunity just like I intimated. On that note, please join me to welcome Mr. Hasum Sise to deliver his remarks. Is the Chief Justice ready?
We've just been informed that is it the speaker? Oh, okay, the deputy speaker is stepping in for the speaker. So we will welcome both of them and then we continue. But in the meantime, we can start with one presentation while they are preparing to come in.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Hasum, you may carry on with your intervention. Yes, for 5 minutes, yes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Just to say that we have come to a point where we need to give a historical overview of some of the issues that this national dialogue seeks to take care of. Because after the British declared the Gambia a colony in 1894, they divided the country into districts. You know, the former states, Nyomi, Nyamina, Kiang, and so on, were cut into districts, into the 36 districts also that we now have. But we have to know that what they wanted at first, from 1894 onwards, was to create ethnic-based districts, because they did it in Nigeria, North Hausa, Yoruba, South, Igbo, East. So from 1894 to the early 1900s, this was the experiment. Okay, for example, a district like Nyanija, if you look at archival records in their correspondence, they wanted it to be a fuller district. You see. So you can see that there was a very coordinated, a very deliberate attempt, okay, to divide the country into ethnic-based districts. You see. Now, Gambians rose above this, and what happened was that this experiment started, to unravel, such that by 1903, the Secretary of State, the colonial secretary, was writing to the traveling commissioners a circular that I think this experiment will not work. According to him, Gambians are not ready to live in ethnic, enclaves. You see, because people were migrating, okay, from one district into the other. So the whole idea of having, ethnic-based districts, collapsed. Okay, so it was in that year that the British started to rename, to give names, to our districts. Because from 1894 to 1903, all the districts were just given numbers. You see, like Upper Salon, where I come from, was district number 2. Okay, Ilyasa was district number 1, and so on and so forth. Okay, and but when this experiment failed, because Gambians refused, okay, by jumping across the Bolongs or across the river, to settle in other districts, that failed. Now we also have to say that the colonialists also created internal divisions: colony and the protectorate. Colony, Las Batos, Bakau, and Serekunda. The area we now call Bartes. Now protectorate, anywhere from Abuko, upwards, or from Bara, upwards. And everything was done to highlight the so-called differences between the colony and the protectorate, okay? The protectorate was in the hands of the chiefs in customary law. The colony, common law with judges and magistrates and so on. But here also Gambians refuse, okay, to abide by this. Through, for example, the groundnut trade season. When it was November, the whole of Banjul will relocate with their families, like to Pirai Tenda, for example, okay, to Bintang, to Kosemar, okay, to Balingo, okay, stay there November, December, January, February, March, until the end of April when the trade season is ended, then they come back. So you can see that, the project of dividing us, into colony protectorate also failed because Gambians refuse, okay? And particularly, through this, internal migration during the trade season, okay? So you have, people in Batos, having hosts in the villages for 4 months or 5 months of the year. And usually also, when they are coming, from the trade season, they come with 1 or 2, children from the host family. That is how, for example, Sadauda, okay, was entrusted to Payoma, you see. And also number 3, we historians, we always accuse the early political parties, okay, of being ethnic-based. Now, this was also in a context, because the colonialists did not allow the formation of political parties until 1951. It was the 1951 Constitution that allowed the formation of political parties. Now, before 51, you can form a religious group, okay? So you have something like the Batos Young Muslim Society. Or you can form a cultural group, like the Nyomi Kombo Kafo of Sanjali Boyan, okay? You can form a cultural group, like the Salum Khet, okay? But you could not form a political party. And now suddenly in 51, when the Constitution allowed for the formation of political parties, of course, the politicians had to use, okay, these, existing, organizations, cultural or religious organizations as basis, okay, for the formation of their parties, okay. But here also Gambians, should be praised because, immediately, these parties were formed. All of them work towards, transcending, this ethnic, and religious lines. We all know the PPP. The great effort it did, to open up to the people of Banjul, such that, for example, A. Binjai from Banjul was the MP for Kombo North, for 20 years. Can you imagine? Okay. Sadauda himself, from Barajeli, was the MP for Kombo East. Okay, from 1960 to 1970. You see, and he used to have people, leaving Banjul to go and contest elections, in the provinces. Where I come from, Opasalo, our MP was Idinjai, from 1960 to 1970 when he died. You see, a Banjulian. You see, so you can see that. Here also Gambians showed utmost, tolerance. You see, and magnanimity, so as to overcome the divisions, that the colonialists, imposed on us. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you very much, eminent historian Hasum Sise, who has eloquently outlined since the colonial days efforts by Gambians to resist division along tribal and ethno-linguistic lines. Thank you very much indeed. Please give him a big round of applause. Before I call on the next panelists, just like we announced a little while ago, we would now invite the Chief Justice to make his intervention quickly, and then we will carry on with the rest of our program. Honorable Chief Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Is it working? Hello. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come in on a number of issues which had been raised. I thought I'd come back and just deal with those before leaving. I know there is a lot of concern about gender parity, gender equality, and presence of gender or females, a stronger presence of females within public institutions. There was a question in this respect raised with regard to the district tribunals, their composition. It's clear that, of course, there is a very serious underrepresentation of females within those tribunals. Unfortunately, they don't come under the direction of the judiciary. The district tribunals, in some respects, fall under the judiciary in relation to their judicial functions, but in relation to all other matters, they fall under the Ministry of Local Government and Lands. And we'll certainly pass this concern on. But you may be pleased to know that for the other courts, that's the CADI courts, which fall under the judiciary, and which have also, since the inception, more than a century ago, been entirely male-dominated, are being transformed. Last year, we appointed, for the first time, female caddies, 2 female caddies, to try and break this monopoly, and I hope the process will continue. If we do find qualified female Islamic jurists who are interested in those positions, the Judicial Service Commission will clearly be very happy to make some further appointments in this respect. There was some concern, I think, from Mr. Sabale about the use of ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution, within the court system. It's absolutely essential that we do have that. There's too much litigation going on. I've been complaining about that very much. Judges have been complaining. Our current caseload within the court system is about almost 13,000 cases. 13,000 cases. And each of the judges in the High Court has at least 150 cases to deal with. You can imagine how high that caseload is. Not all those cases need to come to court. Some of them are resolvable after mediation and negotiation without being brought to court. And as a way of encouraging potential litigants to explore opportunities for out-of-court settlement, we have changed our rules with effect from last year by requiring that every potential litigant must first file a certificate in court in respect of civil disputes in court that they have explored and exhausted opportunities for out-of-court settlement before the court will hear their cases. And I'm glad to see that lawyers are complying with that procedure. We hope that that will encourage lawyers and litigants genuinely explore out-of-court settlement before coming to court, instead of just jumping out of instinct first time that a client complains, and then the first thing you do is to file papers in court. That should not be the reaction. The first reaction should be to try out-of-court settlement. But beyond that, I think also, in order to encourage resolution of disputes, we need to fall back on our traditional systems much more, as we used to do in the past. Religious leaders, family heads, local leaders, alcalos, sefolus, prominent personalities in every district played a role informally in helping to resolve disputes. And the more that is done, the less litigation we have. Litigation is good, but I can assure you in the end it may give justice and truth to the party that deserves it, but it may not mend your relationships. It may not mend your relationships. Negotiations and conciliation may do that much better. There was concern also about land cases. It's true, we have too many land disputes in the country, particularly in the West Coast region. The bulk of the civil cases which come from West Coast region are all about land disputes. And they are litigated initially, primarily at the level of the district tribunals. And you're right, we need to look at ways how to deal with it. So we have been exploring the possibility of establishing specialized land dispute courts, which will focus on those cases with a view to moving them, dealing with them, resolving them much more expeditiously. It's a matter which I have even raised with His Excellency the President, who is very much interested in the idea and supportive of it too, because he is equally concerned that there are too many land disputes, and often it leads to instances of disorder. It can lead to you can have a destabilizing effect, as we've seen in places like Farato and other places. So we are exploring that possibility, that idea, and hopefully we'll end up with a land disputes court very soon. Closely tied to that, of course, is the possibility of having a commercial court as well. There is a need to have a specialized court for dealing with commercial disputes. It's important for banks, for companies, for investors, that their disputes are dealt with fairly quickly. Potential investors, when they want to come into a country, the things they look for essentially after profit and potential loss is whether, if there is a dispute, the dispute can be resolved fairly quickly and fairly also. And that's what they look for. But if you leave all these commercial disputes and the land disputes to be dealt with together with the other general run of cases, they will suffer delays as well. So we are looking into that possibility as well, together with some overseas development partners. Then there is finally the question of the draft constitution. And I cannot agree more with the Deputy Speaker. I think most, if not all of us, want a new constitution in place. We have tried once and gone up to the National Assembly, and it was rejected. I think it would be an error to just simply reintroduce the same text back into the National Assembly and expect a different result. If you keep on doing the same thing, you should expect the same result. We have to learn lessons from the past, identify the reasons why the bill was rejected, try and see whether those concerns by various groups within the National Assembly, which led to their opposition to the bill, can be met, whether those concerns can be satisfied. So we must prepare the ground before we go to the National Assembly to ensure that when we go to the National Assembly, we'll have a different result, a successful result, successful outcome. And that means getting over, finding a resolution of the problems which led to the rejection the first time round. I think that may be the best way to proceed. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Lordship, the Chief Justice of the Republic, for taking the time to respond adequately to the questions that were raised in the first half of the program. With that done, we now move on with the rest of the program. I now have the honor to invite Ms. Lala Toure to deliver her remarks on the theme of the occasion. Please join me to welcome Lala to the podium.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to stand on existing protocols. Before I get on to sharing my reflections and reading the statement that I had written to share on behalf of young people, I would just like to say a huge thank you and recognize the work of Ami Bojang Sisoho. Last year, when she started this public forum, I know the effort that she put into making it working, and that is why today we're able to have a second edition, because she did a great job hosting the very first one. It's always great that we give women their flowers for the work and the effort that they put into making or contributing to national development. So Auntie Amy, thank you very much for all your work. So when I was tasked to come and speak here, I really struggled to put my reflections down, because there's always so much to talk about when we come to national events, and we have to talk about important issues such as youth inclusion into the socio-economic and political development of our country. So it's always hard to try to summarize all the challenges that young people are faced with, but also talk about all the ways through which young people can play their part into the development of our country. We are at a crossing point as a nation, and as such, the decisions we take, the choices we make about youth empowerment and development can either make or can break our society and the future of our country. When we talk about young people in the Gambia, we always reference the fact that we make up over 60% of the population, which is true, but we're way more than just that statistics. We are people with dreams and aspirations of becoming the best that we can be in our country. We are the Gambia's most valuable asset that should be prioritized and invested into. It is quite important that in these conversations on national development, we talk about the roles young people can play. The voices and perspective of youth are fundamental in governance and decision making. We cannot maintain that we are serious about youth development if we don't include them in these discussions, and if we continue to disregard the lived experiences and challenges young people are faced with. We cannot achieve development if the most crucial section of this country's population have their voices and needs neither heard nor considered. In order to achieve sustainable socioeconomic growth and political development, there is a need to ensure national policies and actions are reflective of the needs of young people from Katong to Kaina. While we do this, we must always consider intersectionality. And I always like to talk about intersectionality because it's very usual when we talk about challenges young people are faced with, challenges women are faced with, and we leave it to that section of the population. But even among the youth population, there are other groups that are further marginalized. We have the persons living with disabilities, and we also have young women who continue to face everyday challenges that limit their participation and representation in national development, and that must end. We're not just statistics. We're not just numbers that are remembered during campaigns and elections by politicians. We are real people with real problems. We are real people. We are real people who can play very fundamental roles in the consolidation of a progressive and accountable and open and inclusive democracy in our country. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is our collective responsibility, both as a government and as a people, to be champions of youth development. Collective responsibility and action is needed now more than ever to bring about impactful and lasting solutions to the challenges that continue to hinder the empowerment of our young people in the country. Today, as we sit in this hall and as we speak, we have teenagers in the streets that are addicted to drugs and are perpetrating violence against people. Today, as we speak, there's likely to be a boat in the middle of the ocean filled with our young men and young women who simply want to have decent lives. Today, as we speak, there are hundreds of young people who are slowly giving up on their dreams because they lack the support that is needed for them to grow in their own country. This is alarming. This is unacceptable. We have an obligation to protect our youth, to promote their access to opportunities and to basic life necessities. Simple things: quality and affordable education, good health care, access to clean water and good electricity supply, access to good infrastructure, and most importantly, access to employment and funding opportunities. For a country like the Gambia with very limited natural resources, the young people are the most important source of power and resources that need to be invested in. How can we achieve this? We must start by allocating more state resources to young people. Currently, the Ministry of Youth and Sports is among the ministries with the least funds allocated to them in our annual budget. While it is understood that development is mainstreamed in other ministries and their work, it is unacceptable that the Ministry of Youth and Sport, that oversees a section of our population that makes up over 60%, is allocated the least funds. How are young people prioritized? Youth voices must be heard. Young people are allies in development. Young people have been in the forefront of every significant moment of change in history, and collective efforts of young people can open up political and socio-economic space within political systems too. We must not repeat the mistakes of the past. We must not fail our youth. We must invest in and support the skills that are needed for our future and our children's future. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I will not do justice if I leave this podium and not talk about young women and women in general. I will use this opportunity to call on His Excellency the President and the government to effectively enforce national legislation that seeks to protect the rights of women and girls. And this includes not accepting, under any circumstances, the repealing of national legislation that seeks to promote and protect the rights of women and girls. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lala Toure. So much to digest, so much to take on, maybe during the question and answer session. She said one of the salient points that she mentioned is the fact that young people are not just statistics, but people with real problems and challenges. You know, like I said, so much to digest. I'm sure once we get to the Q&A session, you know, there will be people ready to you know, engage with the various discussions and the points that are being made here by the distinguished panelists here. Ladies and gentlemen, next to come to the podium to share his reflections with us is His Worship Mohammed Krubali. Mohammed, please.
Yes. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you very much. I seize this opportunity to recognize the presence of everybody here. I am Mohammed Krubali. You were told that yet the first and only visually impaired principal magistrate who presides over criminal and civil cases on an equal basis with others, and the chairman of Gambia Federation of the Disabled and National Disability Advisory Council, established under Section 8 of Persons with Disabilities Act 2021, and consequently, pursuant to Section 11, subsection 1A of the Act, the President of the Republic appointed me as chairperson of National Disability Advisory Council. I am here in my capacity as chairperson of the Federation of the Disabled, representing persons with disabilities in the Gambia. I am indeed happy to be here to discuss and reflect on the theme of the national dialogue, which is our collective responsibilities of preserving the nation, safeguarding the state, and securing our resources. And the overarching objective or the aim of this theme or national dialogue is to strengthen citizens' participation in nation building. So as persons with disabilities, it is our strong conviction, as I have told you inter alia, that integrating persons with disabilities in decision-making processes, planning, programming, policy making is undoubtedly a relevant strategy for any sustainable development, which means if the Gambia wants to sustain development, it must consider and include persons with disabilities considered to be the vulnerable group and underrepresented in the Gambia. We should have representation in the National Assembly, representation in cabinet, representation in all sectors, so far as we are all advocating for equal treatment for all and non-discrimination. The Gambia indeed ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities since 2015 and now has a domesticated legislation called Persons with Disabilities Act in 2021. These are national and international instruments that vividly outlined the principles of persons with disabilities. We call them uncompromising principles. And these principles are respect for inherent dignity, individual autonomy, including freedom to make one's own choice, and independence of persons with disabilities. That's principle 1. Principle 2 is non-discrimination, meaning persons with disabilities should not be discriminated against as cautioned by Section 33 of the 1997 Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia. The third principle is accessibility, that private and public buildings must be accessible to persons with disabilities, and persons with disabilities must receive information in accessible format. For instance, sign language interpretation, braille, audio, tactile, electronic, spoken and non-spoken languages, etc. Principle 4, equality of opportunities. So meaning available opportunities should be distributed amongst everybody without distinction in any kind. Principle 5, full and effective participation of persons with disabilities in all walks of life. This complements non-discrimination. Principle 6, acceptance for difference, including respecting the rights of persons with disabilities as part of humanity and human diversity. Principle 7, equality between men and women. So you see, persons with disabilities, in as much as we are advocating for inclusion, we are not selfish. We said there should be this equality between men and women. Principle 8 as the final principle is respect for the evolving capacity of children, including respecting the rights of children with disabilities in order to preserve their identity. We have a lot of problems, and persons with disabilities face numerous problems, amongst which is employment. Persons with disabilities are not employed because they are judged on the basis of our disabilities. Access to transportation is a problem. Access to finance is a problem. And I've told you inter earlier that when we are talking about equality, one must always recourse to the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, in which Article 1 says, all human beings are born free and equal and in rights and dignity, and must consensuously act towards each other in the spirit of brotherhood. So persons with disabilities are Gambian citizens, persons with disabilities are taxpayers, persons with disabilities should be accorded, and we must fit in all sectors. In light of the foregoing, before I conclude, just last Saturday, 10th, we have commemorated the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And can you imagine, look at our beautiful team. It is, I quote, united in action to rescue and achieve the SDGs, that is the Sustainable Development Goals Agenda of 2030, for, with, and persons with disabilities. So I make a clarion call on behalf of all persons with disabilities to unite and stand with solidarity with us in order to achieve the mantra of Sustainable Development Goals Agenda of 2030, which is leaving no one behind. And from this, I hope that you must have heard the message, and from now on, you will consider including persons with disabilities in all walks of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Your Worship, Magistrate Mohammed Kurubali, the chairperson of the Gambia Federation of the Disabled. Very inspiring remarks, but also quite thought-provoking as well. Thank you very much indeed for those wonderful remarks. I now have the honor to invite Dr. Georgia Tambiru to also share her reflections. Please join me to welcome her to the podium. Sorry? Yes, Dr. Georgia Tambiru is next. Yeah. Please, a round of applause, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum. All protocols duly observed. I want to start off with a question. Do you know that by 2050, almost half of the world population will be coming from Africa? Half of the whole world would be from Africa. We will have a youth bulge. This can be a demographic dividend or a disaster. And I know we don't want that to happen. Talking to the team, we all have a role to play. It's a collective effort. In our own little ways, we can make a difference. The title of my talk is Filling the Missing Middle. I'll let you know what I mean by that. Currently in Gambia, 50% of our youth are neither in employment nor in training or education. This is a large population of our youth that can be contributing to socio-economic development of our country. We also have almost 100,000 discouraged job seekers, they're called. They're not making any effort because they do not have the required skills to get gainful employment or start their own businesses. They've tried so many times to get jobs and they can't, so they just give up. What are we doing about them? We have an illegal immigration rate of 2%, which is the highest on the continent, given our small population. I always say entrepreneurship is the vaccine to unemployment. Some of you were at the last State of the Nation forum, and I spoke about this. Currently, we have a lot of graduates coming through our university system that are unemployed. We recently advertised for just an internship position, and we got 200 applicants, but I could only fill 2 positions, which makes me very sad. So our youth are not lazy. They're looking for opportunities, but they need to have the capacity in order to get those opportunities. But rather than encouraging job seekers, let's try to make them see themselves as the opportunities they're looking for. Let's drive entrepreneurship. Now let me take you to a step further. If you look at this picture at the bottom, can anyone just shout out where they think that is? At the bottom there, it's a shanty town. Where in the world do you think that is? Ghana? India? Freetown? Someone said Gambia. Yeah? It's not in Africa. This shanty town is not in Africa. This is in 1960 in South Korea. This is South Korea in 1960, and this is South Korea now. Can you see that transformation? It doesn't mean that we cannot transform Gambia. It means that Gambia can be transformed. So what happened in South Korea? If you look at those two graphs over there, what has been shown, studies has been shown, this was done in Harvard, that in high-income countries, you have very small numbers of micro-businesses, but a very high number of small, medium-sized enterprises. And the large corporations are also slightly low. However, in least developed countries, underdeveloped countries like the Gambia, with low-income countries, you have very high number of micro-businesses, very little number of SMEs, and then you have larger corporations. So that is the middle I'm talking about. That's the missing middle. That's what we're missing. How can we now transform? It's okay to encourage entrepreneurship. Now, how can we support those micro businesses to become SMEs? That is what we need to look at. And that will transform our nation. And how can we do that? First, we need to support informal micro businesses to grow. They need access to capital. I work a lot with entrepreneurs. I see a lot of the members of the GWCC here, a lot of the women entrepreneurs. We provide training for them. We provide tools for them to digitally transform their business, but help them gain access to financing. They mentioned I'm the co-founder of Afrijula, which I call the QuickBooks for the African merchant. Basically, now you have someone in the market who is semi-literate. We are developing solutions that fit our context, that people understand in the local languages to help them gain access to financing. By just entering their sales, they can get financial reports to get access to financing. The funds is there, the lenders have the funds, but our businesses or our entrepreneurs do not have the records to allow them to get access to financing. Let's help them get access to financing. Let's drive innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship training. We can't all be job seekers. There aren't enough jobs for everybody. Let's be job creators. But also, as much as we want to drive innovation and creativity, when we also innovate and provide solutions, let us be the ones to consume that solution, those solutions. I was in Dubai not long ago, and most of the companies from Asia were approaching me because they wanted us to work on Gambian projects. Because our governments are the only ones that are now taking our projects, giving it to foreigners to implement. The money is leaving the country rather than trying to support Gambian innovators. Let's look at having laws, local content laws. Let's try to consume our own. Let's try to support our own people. It's only in Gambia that you'll see a Gambian able to provide a solution to your problem, but you decide rather than supporting that Gambian, let me try and get someone from abroad. Why is it difficult for some of these micro businesses to thrive or gain access to financing? A lot of the times we have so many issues. One is that there's unavailability of credit history. That is a particular challenge. Sometimes they don't have the collateral that they need. So let's think differently. These systems worked in other countries, but it may not necessarily work in our setting. There's no reason why someone wants to send their child abroad or needs a loan but can't get a loan because all they have is cattle. That is something. All they have is lands in another area. That is something. Let's look at another way of defining collateral. Is there a system where micro businesses or entrepreneurs can be tested? They're giving a small amount, and they have to now build their credit history. Let's look at pro-SME policies. It's required. How can government directly support these SMEs so that we can boost economic growth and development? Why do we think that boosting the number of SMEs in the Gambia will actually transform us? SMEs create more jobs than any other than the micro businesses as well as the large corporations. But because SMEs are large, are labor intensive, that is one of the reasons. So I think as we go through our everyday lives, let's think of how it may be that we may not be here for it. There is a particular saying which says that the best countries or the countries that develop is where an old man actually plants a tree under its shade he will not be able to sit under. We may not be doing it for ourselves, but we're doing it for the next generation. And from 1960 to now, it's how long ago? Not that long ago. Some of you who have been here since 1960, I can't say the same for myself, but some of you were here. And we may be able to witness that transformation. Let's make it a collective responsibility. As we do that, let's look into innovation, let's look into STEM, but also including 50% of the population. The country will not move forward if we leave the females behind. As a leader, where I work, I am at INSYS Global, is the first institution to have a creche facility on our premises. Now mothers can return from maternity leave and they have a place to put their children. When we have trainings, the women have a place to bring along their children. It's a small institution, small me. We all can take that as an example. In our own little ways, let's try to make the differences so that we can help Gambia leapfrog, and let's make it how we want it. Why are we all trying to leave Gambia? Because we're looking for greener pastures. Let's travel, let's get the experience, but let's come back and get Gambia to transform to be where we will want to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jojo Tambidu. So much to ponder over, but indeed very constructive and thought-provoking remarks. I'm sure definitely we have policymakers in our midst. When we get to the Q&A session, I'm sure it will be interesting to see our engagements as we tackle these all-important questions. Thank you very much indeed. I now invite, it looks like next on the agenda is Pastor Forbes, but it looks like he's not in our midst today. As a result, so we will move straight on with Serigne Fallou Njie. Serigne Fallou, National Dialogue in the context of the NDP Yurua is what he's going to present on. Serigne Fallou, please. Please join me with a round of applause to welcome Mr. Serigne Fallou.
Thank you, moderator. Honorable National Assembly members present here, honorable ministers, honorable Secretary General, senior government officers present here today, I stand on all other protocols. First, let me say a very big thank you to the National Organizing Committee for inviting me. I would say I created problems for myself because I was just suggesting to them that this is a discussion among non-government actors, non-state actors. Why don't you try to link it to the National Development Plan? And then they say, okay, you do it. So I actually created problems, or I created work for myself, but I'm more than happy to share my thoughts on this. Now, my reflections would be on what has been said during this past week, from Monday to Wednesday to today, vis-a-vis the National Development Framework that we have. And I'm going to look at it from 4 different perspectives, or when I look at what's been said, compared to where the country is moving as a nation, there are 4 things that I see here. There are things that are very much linked and directly associated with the National Development Framework, or the RFNDP, or the URUA. There are those things that are also components or aspects of the URUA. There are those which I would call enablers. They would enable us be able to get where we want to. And there are those that have very little or no relationship with the National Development Plan. And I'll start with that first one, or at that last one. There are a number of issues which I was expecting to see, or which I was expecting them to be very prominent in what we are doing, and it is not there. One of them has been mentioned, the issue of persons living with disabilities. Another population group which I have not heard much talked about is the issue of children. Yes, we've talked about young people, but I don't think I have heard the word children. and we know the importance of children. We talk about young people, but it is the children who need to survive to transform into young people, to transform into leaders. Then another population group which I think is critical is the diaspora. We know the important role played by the diaspora. They influence a lot, they have a lot of impact on the economy, and such a thing like this, I believe their participation, their action is crucial. Now that's in terms of the population groups which I feel are absent. In terms of the content, I see two things that I would say I have not heard enough about. The first one is data, research, science, and technology, especially ICT. In this day and age, I don't believe you can make much progress, you can do a lot without this. Of course, I have my biases in data because I am a statistician, but the young lady talked about the issues of young people. We don't want to be a statistic. Yes, we don't want you to be a statistic, but do we have actually the information that we need to be able to adequately take care of your needs? I don't think that is available. And then, of course, the other issue which has been brought here and there is the issue of accountability. The first day, there was quite a lot of talk about accountability. There was quite a lot of talk about management of resources. But I believe, using my knowledge, my experience, accountability goes far beyond that. There are development experts here. When we talk about accountability, the textbook definition of accountability is taking responsibility for the outcome of your actions. It's not just about whether you take action or not, but the outcome of those actions should be the responsibility of the person entrusted with that task. And this is an issue that we actually, I believe, need to talk about much more. Now, coming to the 4 areas or the 6 thematic areas that were talked about, I believe 2 of them fall very much in line with the NDP or URWA. The first on preserving the nation, talking about peace, stability, and security is very much in line what we have in the NDP. It's the second pillar on governance or the NDP. And also the one on safety, security is also very much in line with the NDP. We know one of the core areas of the NDP is the security sector reform. Well, governance, including a number of things. The issue of the constitution is there, security reforms is there, electoral reforms are there, and so many other things. So these 3 areas, I think they very much fall within the NDP. There are 2 areas, however, which I would say I do not see them very much related to the NDP. Maybe they could be enablers. One is the issue of religious tolerance, and the other one, the issue of ethnic diversity. Yes, they do not fall squarely within the NDP, but these are issues which I believe could be enablers for the NDP. And then the other 2, the media and also the issue of irregular migration. Irregular migration is a key aspect of the NDP. It is one of the pillars, and government has in place policies and programs it intends to embark on to realize the objectives of the NDP. Now let me say this. It is one thing to say, yes, we have all these activities or ideas or programs or whatever in place. But there are a few fundamental issues that I want to sort of like advise on or propose. One is I believe we need to avoid a parallel process. We know there are many planning processes in this place. There are many things that are happening, but let us make sure that there is synergy, there is complementarity, there is cohesion in whatever we are doing. The second issue is there is need for political willingness. Now, when I talk about political willingness, I don't mean party politics. But again, in the development context, when you talk about political willingness, it's the commitment or the intention to support a particular initiative. I think it's already being shown, but the intention is not enough. We have to have clear outcomes, clear targets. we have to have specific time frames, and we have to have what is called graduated sanctions. Graduated sanctions mean reward for achievement, consequences for failure. We always say where there are no consequences of failure, or where failure has no consequences, there is no incentive for performance. And this is something I think we need to adopt in this country. People are doing things with impunity because we know nothing will come out of it. This is, I mean, a paradigm shift we need to make. Now, just finally now, Mr. Moderator, we all know that, I mean, what we call this nexus between development, peace and security, and human rights. As we say, they are the three sides of a triangle. They are very much interlinked. One is the cause of the other, and also one is the consequence of the other. And as Kofi Annan said the other time, there can be no peace without development, and no development without peace. Our focus here is on improving the socio-economic well-being of our people. And I'll go back to my friend and colleague Sabali on what he said about happiness. Yes, happiness could be something we want to achieve, but it is not an end in itself. It is a means to an end. This is not Bhutan. We all know, those of us in international development, we know about the Bhutan Happiness Index. We are not talking about a Gambian Happiness Index. What we are talking about is improvements in the lives and livelihoods of Gambians. And peace and security, as well as human rights, are critical aspects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Serin Falunjai, ending on a very high note, very thought-provoking again. Remarks, indeed, a lot to ponder on, and I'm sure once we get to the Q&A, I can foresee that we'll have a very exciting and interactive engagement. Ladies and gentlemen, just a short announcement from a member of the audience. I think he misplaced his phone. He would like to seek your help in trying to locate it. He's still calling the phone and no one is picking it up, so he believes somewhere he must have misplaced it. It's a smartphone. The brand is Realme, ash color in a black jacket. If you happen to find the phone, kindly locate Matar at the back. Yes, right there, next to the camera. Thank you very much, Mr. Njai. Next to deliver her remarks or reflections on the team is Nene MC Cham. Please join me to welcome Madam Cham to the podium to deliver her remarks. And once that is done, we go into the next part of the session, which is the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator.
Excuse me, Nene. Mr. Moderator, I think it's important we recognize the presence of the former Vice President, Her Excellency Fatoumata Jallow Tambajang, in our midst here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. May I observe the existing protocols? Good afternoon, everybody. We gather here today to dilate on the theme in commemoration of our independence celebrations, which is on Sunday, to reflect on our collective responsibility of preserving the nation, safeguarding the state, and securing our resources. And we do this within the context of the Gambia's journey towards progress, unity, and peace. As we embark on this dialogue, it is imperative to recognize the significance of our collective responsibility in nation building and shaping the destiny of our nation. The theme underscores the fundamental principles that bind us together as citizens of the Gambia and highlights the crucial role each and every single one of us plays in preserving our national identity, safeguarding our state institutions, and ensuring responsible management of our resources. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me recall that the Gambia's journey towards independence was made possible mainly because of the unity and determination of our forefathers to end colonial rules and chart their own destiny. At the time, the Gambia was referred to as an improbable nation. However, despite the challenges faced after independence, our country rose to become a beacon of democracy. And a testament to that fact is the fact that the African Commission on Human and People's Rights has its headquarters here in the Gambia. The charter, which is called the Banjul Charter, as alluded to by the Honorable Chief Justice this morning, I think it's then fitting to pay tribute to those founding fathers of our independence, many of whom have departed this life. We pray, continue to pray for them, that they be in peace, and we continue to pray for those who are still alive, for their good health, and for them to stick around for much longer. Now, Mr. Moderator, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I shall delve into the components of the theme. One of the disadvantages of speaking last is that a lot of the ideas and the points you would have said have been said. Nevertheless, there may be some that haven't been said yet. Now, from the perspective of a legal practitioner, underscoring the importance of upholding the rule of law, promoting good governance, and fostering inclusive development, we have a duty to ensure that the rule of law prevails and the rights and freedoms of all citizens are protected at all times. As a member of the bar, I feel that we must continue to advocate for laws and policies that promote sustainable development, protect the environment, and ensure that benefits of our resources are shared equitably among all Gambians. Now, the preservation of our nation entails safeguarding our democratic values, and that is the respect, as I said earlier, for the rule of law, for the rights of its citizens and their freedoms. I believe that a robust legal framework is essential to ensuring accountability, transparency, and justice within our society. Therefore, it is incumbent on all of us to continue to advocate for laws and policies that promote equality before the law, access to justice, and protection of human rights and for all individuals, regardless of their background or status. Here I want to add my voice to earlier speakers about the need to have the new constitution. It is overdue. To think that we are in the eighth year since after 2016, and that the 1997 constitution and all the amendments and all other laws, including archaic laws from decades ago, are still in our books. The draft constitution is essentially a fine one. We can argue about provisions here and there, but at the end of the day, that constitution needs to go back to the National Assembly, and I urge all members, when they come to scrutinize that draft constitution, whether it's in its old form or it has been, provisions have been changed, to see nothing but what is best for the Gambia and its people. That is what we must try to do. I know it's difficult for politicians, but that is what we must see. We must see Gambia and its people and what is best for them at all times. And when we do that, we will see eye to eye. We're on one team when Gambia is playing against any country in this world. How do we manage that? We may not like certain players, but we support the Gambia when they're playing against anybody. So this is very important. So we also need to embrace diversity and the inclusion of women and persons with disability in every single sector of development by putting a legal framework in place. My learned friend and his worship has gone to town on the Persons with Disabilities Act, so I need not dilate that. It is one thing to pass laws and another thing to ensure that the population enjoys those laws. Otherwise, They're just paper. So implementation, implementation, implementation. As simple as access, some of them would have problems. Even coming to court, some would have problems. Negotiating, because there aren't RAMs and other things. So we really must listen and ensure that at least they enjoy what we have given them in those laws. And I also want to remind that in most of these laws, particularly affecting women and children, there are laws that domesticate international instruments, UN, the CEDAW, Convention Against All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the Children's Act, domesticating the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We have subscribed, the Gambia has subscribed to these international instruments, and there's an obligation, it's not a choice, it's an obligation to domesticate, to implement. So can you imagine you have already domesticated, and you've begun implementing, and all of a sudden you want to regress? I warn against any such moves, and I think the way forward would be more education. Let us talk to each other. You cannot do things by force. We have our cultural norms and values, some of which are good, others which are inimical to the progress and development of women and children. Just to say that, sorry, I spoke last, so you shall give me 5 minutes, 5 extra minutes. So it's important that we protect the most vulnerable people, and children are among them. They cannot make their choices. They cannot make a choice whether they want things happen to them or not, even to go to school or not, they cannot. So us, the elders, us, the sisters, the brothers, the mothers, the grandmothers, it is our duty to protect them until such time as they can decide for themselves what to do. So that's very important that I say that. And also strengthening our institutions, as I said, promoting public trust and combating corruption at all levels. I need not say more about that. I think at the first day and today I heard speakers speak about corruption. I think everybody agrees that it is getting out of hand and something needs to be done. I think we need to look inward and less about me and more about the Gambia and what is good for this country. That is the only way to develop, Jojo, really. So the rule of law must prevail in every aspect of governance, the executive and the legislature and the judiciary, ensuring that those entrusted with power are held accountable for their actions. As legal professionals, we have a duty to uphold the integrity of the legal system, to work to root out corruption, and have transparency in the way the government is run. Only through collective efforts can we build a state that is resilient, accountable, and responsive to the needs of its citizens. And finally, securing our resources necessitates sustainable development, responsible stewardship, and equitable distribution of wealth. The Gambia is blessed with abundant natural resources, from fertile land to rich biodiversity, which hold immense potential for economic growth and prosperity. However, the exploitation of these resources must be managed, and managed well in a manner that is environmentally sustainable, socially inclusive, and economically beneficial for all segments of society. We must advocate, as I said, for these things. Laws that promote responsible resource management, protect the rights of communities, and ensure equitable access to opportunities for all citizens. In conclusion, Mr. Moderator, our collective responsibility, as it says in the title, must not only be a slogan, it must be a solemn commitment that requires the concerted efforts of all stakeholders as we engage in this dialogue. Let us reaffirm our commitment to the principles of democracy, justice, and equality, and work together towards building a prosperous and inclusive society for present generation and future to come. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nene MC Cham. Thank you very much to all the distinguished panelists here. You will agree with me that they have done justice to the topic at hand. Like I announced earlier, we've now come to the end of the reflections We now move to the last part, which is the Q&A. But before we do so, I've been informed that there is a short video, very short video, I promise you, a couple of minutes, that the organizers would like to show us. If the control room is able to hear me, can you kindly project the video quickly before we get into the Q&A? Control room, please.
The Gambia gained its independence free from colonial rule.
This was a journey fought by many.
The brave and bold Edward Francis, Père Sanjay, Safariman Singate, Sadauda Kairaba Jawra, Laba Jahuba.
And the entire Gambian populace. We stood up, we fought for our independence.
For a beautiful, smiling coast of Africa. But today, the Gambia is falling.
Will you allow it to all crumble under your watch? History hasn't been kind to us.
But we stand at a crossroads right now. We have learned all the things that doesn't work for our country.
It is our collective